Your fascia is dry, and it keeps your body bound to the past through a mechanism you never noticed was running. The tissue has lost its ability to glide between layers. What was once fluid has turned into constant friction, and now time is carried as a continuous internal load. The morning stiffness in your torso, the locked hips, the breath that never quite reaches depth. All of this points to fascial micro-immobility, a state where the present tries to enter but finds the space already occupied by older timelines crystallized inside the body itself. You are about to learn a specific movement that rehydrates the fascia and restores its ability to glide again. And you will understand why drinking water never touched what was truly stuck. There is a stark difference between hydrating the organism and restoring mechanical fluidity within fascial layers. And that difference explains why so many approaches failed where this movement works. Stopping this video now means missing the exact sensation of internal melting that is about to unfold in your body over the next few minutes, when the tissue finally yields and time begins to circulate again. The past hurts exactly where gliding stopped, and in a moment you will locate that point within yourself. Fascial micro-immobility occurs when layers of tissue that should slide freely lose that ability and begin to stick to one another. The body adopts containment as a survival strategy at a specific moment, but that containment is never released because the nervous system does not recognize that the threat has ended. The fixation does not live in thoughts or memories. It lives in the friction between fascial planes that remain bonded even when there is no longer any reason for it. Movement becomes economical, the breath never drops, gestures remain unfinished, because the tissue sustains an old defense as if danger was still present. In Hermetic traditions, fascia was understood as the living parchment of the temple, the substance where every unresolved experience is inscribed when flow is interrupted. Thoth taught that the body records what consciousness could not process through circulation, and that rigidity in the temple arises when memory meets obstruction instead of passage. What no longer circulates crystallizes. What loses mobility becomes weight, and time begins to be carried as internal mass rather than lived as a passage. This is how the mechanism works. When the nervous system detects threat, it reduces variation in movement to preserve safety. The body settles into minimal patterns that consume less energy and expose less vulnerability. The fascia follows this restriction, reducing mechanical hydration between layers and increasing adhesion between tissues. What was fluid mobility becomes protective economy, and that economy persists long after the danger has passed, because letting go is still interpreted as risk by the entire organism. Research in fascial neuroscience has revealed something striking. Connective tissue does not act as a passive structure. It actively responds to prolonged autonomic states, altering viscosity, tension, transmission, and its relationship with the nervous system. When the body remains in quiet vigilance, the fascia dries functionally, not from a lack of fluid, but from the absence of living movement that pumps fluid between layers. Friction increases, gliding diminishes, and the past persists exactly where the tissue stopped moving. This explains why you wake up stiff, why choices seem to demand disproportionate effort, why creativity locks up, why the present never seems to fully fit inside your body. Fascial micro-immobility keeps you inhabiting an organism that is still reacting to something that has already ended. And until the tissue regains its ability to glide, time remains fixed within. There is someone who lived in precisely this condition, someone whose story will reveal how the past anchors itself in the body when movement is interrupted, and how everything reorganizes when the tissue finally begins to flow again. Cynthia was 45 years old and worked as a hotel housekeeper in the southern part of the city. She woke up at 5 every morning, and before even getting out of bed, she could already feel her torso locked, as if she had spent the entire night bracing herself. Her hips refused to soften when she stood up. Her breath stayed high in her chest. Every movement seemed to demand more energy than it should. She had learned to live with it, labeling everything as jubilated fatigue. But deep down she knew something else was at work, something no amount of rest ever touched. The routine at the hotel was exhausting. Hours bent over changing sheets, cleaning bathrooms, carrying stacks of towels down long corridors. What bothered her most was not the physical tiredness, but the sense that her body never truly relaxed, even on her days off. She noticed how she avoided certain postures, how she conserved gestures, how her breath never reached the pelvis. On the rare occasions when she tried to stretch, her body resisted in a strange way, as if it were afraid to open. Relationships did not last, not for lack of affection, but because she could never offer full presence. Part of her always remained held back, guarded, unreachable. Cynthia tried regular massage for several months, assuming the rigidity was just accumulated muscle tension. She also did physical therapy on medical advice, but the exercises never reached the root of the problem. She sought therapy to understand whether the containment was emotional, and although she gained insight into her history, her body remained locked in exactly the same way. None of this was wrong, but none of it reached the layer where the past had truly anchored itself, where the tissue had lost mobility and turned old protection into permanent friction. It was during a coffee break in the hotel's service corridor that Cynthia had a conversation that would change everything. One of the regular guests, a woman who always left her room immaculate and often thanked her for the work, noticed how frequently Cynthia massaged her lower back. The woman said she recognized that rigidity. She had carried the same kind of lock for years until she discovered that the problem was not in the muscles, but in the fascia that had lost its ability to glide. She mentioned a specific movement, simple, that rehydrated the tissue from the inside out. It required no force and no flexibility, only presence and the right rhythm. Cynthia was intrigued, especially when the woman described the sensation of internal melting she had felt, as if layers that had been stuck together had finally begun to move. Cynthia asked for more details, wrote the instructions on a napkin, and decided to try it that very night. Cynthia lay down on the floor of her room, followed what she had written, and began with low respiratory anchoring. For the first few minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then something shifted. Her breath dropped in a way she had not felt in years. Her solar plexus softened, and for the first time in a long while, she sensed internal space where there had only been compression. Her hips yielded slightly, and a strange warmth began to spread between her ribs and her pelvis. She felt the tissue start to glide, layer by layer, as if her body had finally been given permission to release something it had been holding for decades. What happened after that moment, what Cynthia discovered in the days that followed as she continued the practice, is exactly what you are about to experience now in your own body. The movement you are about to do is not stretching. It is not strength. It is not flexibility. It is the restoration of tissue gliding through rhythmic pressure and conscious micro-movement. You will mechanically rehydrate the fascia, giving the tissue back its ability to move in layers, to pump fluid, to release the friction that keeps the past fixed in place. Begin lying on the floor, knees bent, feet grounded. Place one hand on the lower abdomen, just above the pubic bone, and the other on the sternum. Breathe naturally and observe where the air goes first. The low respiratory anchoring is what allows the nervous system to yield without collapsing. Breathe in slowly through your nose, directing the air to the hand on your lower abdomen, as if you were filling the pelvis from within. Exhale gently through your mouth, without forcing. Don't push the breath down, invite it. The difference is subtle but essential. Pushing maintains guard. Inviting allows sliding. Repeat this 10 times, slowly, paying attention to each descent of the air. You will notice that the breath begins to reach places that have been blocked for a long time. The solar plexus may soften, the ribs may expand laterally, the pelvis may yield a little more with each cycle. When the breath is descending with less resistance, you will introduce slow, spiraling mobilization. Keep your knees bent, feet on the floor. Let your knees fall gently to the right, without forcing, just allowing the weight to guide them. Your spine will rotate along, but not fully. Let the twist happen as far as your body accepts without locking. Breathe there 3 deep breaths. Feel the tissue beginning to awaken between the ribs and the pelvis, as if layers that were stuck together were starting to recognize each other again. Slowly return to center, pause, and bring your knees to the left. Same thing, 3 breaths, allowing the tissue to open without aggression. Repeat this spiraling movement 3 times on each side, always respecting the rhythm of your body. You might notice internal warmth beginning to spread, a sense of space increasing between the pelvis and diaphragm, spontaneous microsize arising. These are signs that the fascia is starting to rehydrate, that the internal pumping mechanism is working again. Some bodies will need smaller amplitude, others will be able to rotate a bit more, and that doesn't matter. What matters is the sliding happening between layers, not the distance traveled by the movement. If your body resists too much, decrease the amplitude. If it's yielding easily, you can deepen a little more, but never force. Now you will add gentle compression to the movement. When the knees fall to one side, place the opposite hand on the side of your waist, just below the ribs. Apply gentle pressure, as if you were helping the tissue to reorganize, not pushing, but inviting. Breathe there, letting the pressure of the hand dialogue with the breath. This creates a pumping effect that restores mechanical hydration to the tissue. Fascia is not rehydrated by water circulating in the blood. It's rehydrated by movement that creates pressure variation, suction, and release. You are teaching your body to do this again. Do this 3 more times on each side, alternating, always with the hand applying gentle pressure on the opposite side. Feel the heat increase, the sensation of melting, spreading. The solar plexus may fully release. The hips may yield in a way you haven't felt in years. The breath may drop effortlessly. This is the sensation of fascial micro-immobility beginning to dissolve. Layers regaining their glide. Time starting to circulate again because the tissue has stopped sustaining friction. You are beginning to leave the past through your body, not through your mind. Before moving on to the next phase, there is something you need to know about Cynthia, something that happened in the following days when she continued practicing exactly what you're doing now. Cynthia practiced the movement every night for 3 weeks. In the first few days, the change was subtle, but it was there. The morning stiffness lessened, the hips started to yield more easily when she got up, and her breath began to drop effortlessly. But what truly surprised her was how this affected her life beyond the body. Decisions that once took days of indecision started happening fluidly, as if the internal blockage that delayed everything had finally released. She accepted an invitation to go out that she would normally have declined, and for the first time in years, she was able to be fully present, without that part of her that remained protected and inaccessible. The most concrete transformation happened at work. Cynthia noticed that her body didn't end the day as tense as before. that she could hold her posture without excessive effort, and that the repetitive movements no longer built up the tension she used to carry home. She started talking more with her co-workers, laughing easily, taking up space in a way that once seemed impossible. The past hadn't disappeared, but it had stopped hurting exactly where the tissue now slid. She didn't need to revisit memories or understand old narratives. Her body simply stopped carrying time as internal weight. What Cynthia felt during those 3 weeks is exactly what is starting to happen in your body now. The internal melting, the gliding between layers, the sense of space increasing, the breath finally dropping. You are rehydrating the fascia just as she did, and what comes next will deepen this transformation even further. Now you will introduce pulses of compression and release that restore deep pumping in the tissue. Return to the starting position, knees bent, feet grounded. Place both hands on the sides of your waist, just below the ribs. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, apply gentle compression with your hands, as if you were helping the air to fully release. Release the pressure as you inhale. Repeat this 10 times, creating a rhythm of compression and release that mimics the natural pumping the fascia lost over time. This movement may seem simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You are teaching the tissue to circulate fluid again, to create pressure variation that mechanically hydrates the fascial layers. Each compression pushes fluid out, each release pulls fluid in, and this repeated cycle restores the sliding ability that had been lost. You may feel the heat intensifying, the sense of space growing even more, and spontaneous micro-sighs arising. These are signs that the nervous system is accepting the change, that the body is coming out of its silent vigilant state and entering a state of safety that allows true mobility. The integration of breath, anchoring, spiraling mobilization, and compression pulses creates a complete fascial rehydration effect. Breath prepares the nervous system, spiraling movement awakens the layers, and compression restores the pumping. Together, these 3 elements return the body's ability to glide, to circulate, and to update the present without sustaining the past as internal friction. You're not just releasing tension, you are reorganizing the way the tissue relates to time. What was fixed starts flowing again, what was stuck starts moving again, what was dry becomes hydrated again. The central practice is complete. The tissue has regained its glide, the body is breathing deeply again, and the present finally fits completely inside of you. Now comes the moment to seal this transformation before the nervous system, out of familiarity, tries to return to old patterns. The sign that the transformation has occurred is in the breath that finally reaches the pelvis without obstacle, in the solar plexus that yielded without collapsing, in the sense of space between the ribs and hips that didn't exist before. You may feel your feet more grounded, your torso less armored, your jaw relaxed. These markers confirm that the tissue has regained its glide, that fascial micro-immobility has started to dissolve, and that the past has stopped being sustained as internal friction. The body has returned to the present because the present finally fits fully inside it. To anchor this state, you will create a simple gesture signal that you can repeat at any moment. Place your right hand on your lower abdomen and your left hand on your sternum. Breathe deeply 3 times, feeling the air drop to the pelvis, and on the 3rd exhale, apply light pressure with both hands simultaneously. Hold that pressure for 3 seconds, then release. This gesture reconnects you with the sensation of internal sliding, reactivates the fascial pumping, and reminds the body that it can yield without danger. It takes less than a minute and works anywhere, discreetly. When you notice morning stiffness returning, your hips locking again, or your breath shortening over the next few days, use the 2-hand signal gesture and repeat internally as you breathe. The tissue glides. Time flows, the present inhabits. This phrase reconnects you to the state of fluidity you just experienced, and the body responds because it now knows gliding. This is not an empty affirmation. It is a somatic instruction anchored in lived experience. Use it as often as needed, especially in the first days, until the body sustains this pattern more naturally. What you just did in your body will continue reorganizing over the coming hours and days, as the tissue consolidates its ability to glide, to pump, and to update the present without carrying the past as internal weight. You now hold in your body something that was previously locked, an internal capacity to glide that reorganizes how you inhabit time. The morning stiffness that once felt inevitable stops being destiny. The hips that refuse to yield begin to respond. The breath reaches a depth you had forgotten existed. These subtle shifts change decisions, relationships, and presence. A body that flows again creates a life that moves forward, not because you forced external change, but because the tissue stopped sustaining the internal friction that kept the past active. The fascial rehydration you experienced in this video is only one layer of what can be restored. There are other regions where memory still anchors itself, other patterns of containment that can be undone, other movements capable of returning to the temple, the mobility that turns creation into manifestation. The path does not end here. It deepens with every practice that reconnects tissue, consciousness, and living presence. Maurice Merleau-Ponty wrote, "The body is not in space like things are. It inhabits space. When fascia regains its ability to glide, the body stops carrying space as weight and begins to inhabit it as presence. The present is not something you reach. It is something the body can finally sustain when the tissue stops resisting." The source created the body as a temple capable of receiving, circulating, and manifesting. When tissue loses mobility, the temple closes, creation meets resistance, and consciousness occupies only fragments of what it could fully inhabit. Rehydrating the fascia is restoring the temple's capacity to receive God without friction, allowing life to flow without being interrupted by inherited rigidity or crystallized protection. If this content touched something real in you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also carries rigidity that cannot be explained by fatigue alone. This gesture supports the continuity of this work and allows more people to access knowledge that is rarely offered with this depth. Write in the comments, "I rehydrate my fascia and release the past to inhabit the present." This phrase anchors the experience in both body and consciousness, transforming what was lived into an internal instruction the organism recognizes and sustains. If you wish to continue exploring this path of tissue release and somatic reorganization, there is another piece of content available that takes this journey further. Click the video appearing on your screen. The past stops hurting when the tissue begins to glide again, and time starts flowing precisely where you allowed your body to finally yield.